Three, two, one.
Whoa! I made
Oh, you made it back, dude. I'm so excited. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Good
good
job.
stuff.
Hey, did you see that your man crush slash boyfriend slash future guest on our show, hopefully, um, uh, it just became the third richest man in the world?
Oh, he's a third now.
Third richest man in the world.
So what I think is hilarious about this, and this kind of plays into some of the garbage that's been put out there about taxing the increase in equity and stock price and all this stuff. I don't know if you ever saw this, but Jeff Bezos checked out and sold like $2 billion worth of stock a couple of weeks ago, and before that, Mark Zuckerberg, he tried to sell $1 billion worth of stock.
Or Zuckerberg, whatever.
Jeez, I know. Right. But all right, so Mark Zuckerberg, he tried to sell $1 billion worth of stock. At the time, he was worth like $75 billion, right?
Right.
Like a real small fraction, but he wanted some cash. So he goes to sell it.
Just $1 billion.
Well, right. Facebook shares went crazy dropping, right? The market's like, oh, the founder's selling all this and that. There's been a lot of these people that have come out and said, oh, we have to tax the wealth of these people. If you tax the wealth of these people, it's not like they have $1 billion sitting around. Like that's such the anomaly. Elon Musk, he is the third richest man in the world. I was talking to my son about this, and at the time he was the fifth, and like had just broke $100 billion. Right. $100 billion, which is kind of the amount of money that within my lifetime our government has fought tooth and nail over to cut from the budget or like anyway. Anyway, so he's number 3 now. That's great.
He's number 3 now. Yeah, absolutely. It's great stuff. This is the Build and Grow with Real Estate show. My name is Judah Hoover, and this handsome gentleman right over here is the one and only Josh Weidman. I'm a realtor. Josh is a lender, and we come to you every day at noon and talk about real estate and real estate related topics. Okay. This week, because we can finally file for evictions again in the state of Pennsylvania, which is where 80% of our listeners are from, we are talking about how to fill vacancies, because I believe that everybody being able to file for evictions is going to not lead to more evictions than there would have been over the past 3 months by a significant amount, maybe a little bit more, but it's just going to mean that there's 3 months worth of evictions filed in 1 week. And what that's going to mean is there's 3 months worth of vacancies going after a whole bunch of good people. And I think the good people are going to be gobbled up, and you want to be one of the gobblers, not one of the gobblees, or however that works. So you want to be one of the ones that's finding the good people. All this week, we've been talking about how to quickly and efficiently fill vacancies with high quality tenants. If you can do that for your rental properties, everything else just rolls downhill.
So I don't know if you read this, but I stumbled on an article this morning that our buddy President Trump, our right-wing conservative president, has now said that he will not let people get evicted from their homes. And since that, we did a weekly episode about the eviction crisis, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe a Friday episode, whatever, a couple of weeks ago. And at the time, there was 25 million people that were going to be affected by this. That number has ballooned, and right now we're looking at 4 million people could be affected.
4 million people affected.
40 million. We're talking about over 10%, 40, like over 10% of our population could be facing eviction or could qualify for eviction right now. So, I mean, that is a very scary situation. And I think even though I'm against, stopping some of these because I think it really hurts landlords, I do think that this is a problem that has to be addressed. And until, with something of that side, I think it's a big problem. It's something that we got to tackle.
Yes.
Right. I mean, like, It's a fabricated.
I think the best thing to do is do the next best thing yourself, and look out for you and your own, not at the expense of anybody else. Not, I'm going to get mine, and take it from you or whatever. But you need to run your business as professionally and efficiently as possible. Are you getting ready to get beamed up?
Yeah,
Are you?
I know. One of the lights just went out, right?
The aliens have heard your cries, Josh, on our Conspiracy Fridays, and they're coming to take you and teach you a thing or two.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I want to be clear here. I am not advocating for stopping evictions. What I'm more so saying is that just evicting 40 million people from their homes is not a good solution as America.
Correct.
Right? We need. It's something that I've been struggling with.
I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, most landlords are lazy. Most landlords don't evict the people that they should evict, and I think that it's going to be a slow burn. So, but let's jump into content today, and we will wax.
Enough of my yapping. All right. All right. So
wax.
We're coming to the end here. I think tomorrow, if we can't get that special guest on that we talked about, I think we might dig into a more detailed analysis of screening tenants and
we can do that.
And the post move-in process. But that's a before or after show conversation.
Yes.
For right now, we're going to talk about awarding the lease, awarding the unit to the right tenant, and then leasing
the lease,
pre-occupancy, and the tenant move-in. So, Judah, honestly, man, I looked at this list and I'm like, really, that doesn't seem like much. But when I started digging into your notes,
that's the problem. Is it doesn't seem like much.
Yeah, sorry. I said I took 5 pages of notes and put them into 4 slides. There's a lot missing here that I'm going to need to fill in the blanks for.
Yeah. So here's the problem. This is something that everybody misses. They think, oh, okay, I need to write a good description. I need to not be a racist when I'm screening applicants. And basically from that point forward, it's easy. It's, there's nothing else to really consider, and everything goes from there. I move the person in, and then I just wait for problems to come up. If you don't do the move-in process, there's a reason that we spent a whole day on running the ads and the marketing, and a whole day on screening the tenants and how to do the showings and things like that. We're spending a whole day on awarding the lease, because if you don't do this right, if you don't do the last stage right, you're setting yourself up for failure, setting yourself up for problems. And so this is very important content. And here's the problem. I know this because I've done it wrong. I know this because as a company, we've done it wrong. I know this because we've learned these lessons. So if you don't do this right, you will have to learn these lessons the hard way too. And you will. The reason we learn from other people's mistakes isn't so that we don't make those mistakes. It's so that we only make that mistake once or twice before we recognize it's a mistake, instead of making it 20 times and then realizing this is a problem, and then making it another 10 or 15 times and saying, I should come up with a process, and then making it another 10 or 15 times and say, well, that process didn't work. What process would work? I'm going to give you the solution so that after you've made the mistake a couple times and recognize it's a problem, you know what to start doing right away.
That's right. So devil's in the details. Let's take a look. Awarding the unit. Let's talk about this first. So the first step's pretty easy. Call the tenant.
Yep.
Hooray.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Great news. I wanted to let you know that we're 123 Main Street. I got everything in. We would like to award the unit to you. It's just really important to cover a number of things here. So again, as we talked about before, it's an $800 a month rental unit. And, we were talking about your credit, because of where your credit is, we're going to allow you to move in, but you're going to have to pay first month's rent and last month's rent, as well as the security deposit. Okay. So that's $800 for the rent. And then that's another $1,600 for the last month's rent and security deposit. All that needs to be paid before you move in. Now, it's September 2nd. We had talked about you moving in September 15th. That's when it's going to be available, or, September 11th or September 12th, whatever date, and just reconfirm that date. Maybe they want to move it up. Maybe they want to move it back. Maybe because of what's going on with the existing tenant or existing work on the property, you need to talk about that. But now you want to just reiterate when is that move-in date. And here's the deal. Don't go to your second best candidate just because if Josh is like, actually, Judah, you know what? I don't want to move in until October 1st or October 15th. I would rather rent to my best, the person who I'm renting to, and not renting to somebody else because of when they can move in. You understand what I'm saying?
Exactly. This is a long-term play.
Right.
You're hoping to move somebody in that's going to stay in this unit for some time, like not a 1-year lease. You like, even if you're signing a 1-year lease, you like them to stay for 2, 5, 7, 10 years.
Right.
So that the difference between, first place and second place could be substantial.
Right. So what I'd like to do is, so we're good on September 5th for the move-in date, right? Okay, good.
Yeah,
so I'm going to put together the lease right now. I'm going to email that over to you, and then once you open it up, you can either execute that lease. I don't use the word sign. I use the word execute, use the word approve. There's a bunch of other words you can use other than sign. Once you execute that lease, if you have any questions, I want you to call me and we'll go over that. Or maybe the way you want to do it is, actually review. I think you should review the lease with people. Josh, I want you to call me when you have that open in front of you and let's go over this. Dear listeners, please understand, you don't read the lease for people line by line, but you go paragraph by paragraph or clause by clause, and you just reiterate with them what the lease says.
So yeah, I would agree with you 99% of the time, and we can cover this a little bit more in depth on the actual lease signing. If you have 100 units, absolutely. But if you are self-managing your own units,
right,
and and the difference between the tenant doing what is in the lease and not is going to be substantial for you. Spend time reviewing that lease. I know,
right. That's what I'm saying. Explain it to them. Yeah, absolutely. So you want to go over, hit the high points of the lease, explain it. So what you're doing is you're just going to explain the next steps of the process. So Josh, I'm going to great. Now that we've picked this date, I need you to call PPL and UGI and get those accounts set up in your name. When's a good date to go do a final walkthrough for the property for moving in the 5th? We should, walk the property on the 4th just to make sure that it is as advertised and the stuff that was done, or nothing. The stuff that was supposed to get done got done, or that it didn't get worse or anything like that. If you have, if you have a signed lease and a deposit, I got no problems giving somebody keys, a day or so early, as long as you have everything. But you do not give keys until you have everything. You also tell them, about that. Other thing you cover on this conversation is proration of rents. Do you want to cover that now, or do you got another slide about proration?
No. You're exactly right. I mean, like, when you're on the phone, you have to make sure that they understand, at least at some level, what you're going to expect from them when it's time to sign the lease. And whether you're emailing it to them or whether they're going to meet you in your office or at McDonald's or wherever to sit down and review this thing.
Right.
Make sure that they are putting time aside, that you get their undivided attention to go over this stuff, because right now on the phone, you're just having a conversation.
Right.
And I don't know about you, like, you talk to somebody and half the time they're probably sending a text message while they're talking to you or shooting an email to somebody. You want to say it anyway because it goes in their head.
I was doing calculations on my calculator, not,
Well, whatever. All right. But the bottom line,
I thought that was a subtle dig at the fact that I was clearly looking at a phone right as you were saying that. But here's how proration of rents works, and you need to explain this, and you'll get in trouble if you do this any other way. I don't care if somebody moves in on the 5th. I don't care if somebody moves in on the 25th. The rent is due on the 1st, just because that's what everybody expects, and that's the best way to do things. When I set the rent, though, I collect full month's rent the first month. So if they move in on the 25th, they're actually paying a full month's worth of rent. But then on the 1st, they pay a prorated rent of only 5 days.
Oh, so you prorate the
So
second month.
prorate the second month. Absolutely. They have to pay that first month's rent. I need to know that they can pay a whole month's rent. So they pay the first month's rent. So if somebody's in this case is moving in on the 5th, I say, Josh, you're moving in on the 5th. On the 5th, you're going to pay $800 worth of rent plus the $1,600 for the last month's rent and the security deposit. But in month 2, on October 1st, you're only going to pay $667. Okay, because that is what 5 days less than 30 is. So you use a 30-day month for proration, just because that's, kind of standardizes everything. So we're going to use a 5-day rent for proration. Whenever you prorate anything, you use a 30-day month, because 30 times 12 is 360. There's actually 365 days in a year. So if you use a 30-day month as your standard for proration, you get pretty darn close.
All right. So lease signing.
So now you meet and you go over, the lease signing with them, and
I want to touch on a point here, right? In person versus online. So look, sometimes you got people running all over the place and they have a hard time making a schedule, and meeting you at a time and place that works for both of you, right?
Sometimes there's a global pandemic going on that is either real or imaginary. Whether the global pandemic is hyped or whether it is 100% authentic, it could be hard to meet people in person.
Right. Whatever the case may be, if you're not meeting them in person and you're doing it over the phone or whatever, you have to make sure that they understand, I'm going over this not to waste my time and yours.
Right.
I'm going over this because the things that are in this lease, especially the things that I'm going to highlight here in our discussion, I'm going to expect you to be responsible for and perform on. So I know I've said this to you 5 times already when you looked at the property, when we were on the phone before you saw it, when you put down your deposit, and put out the application. And the last time we talked, I said them all those times, but now it counts, because once this is signed, this is you acknowledging that I told you this stuff and it's your responsibility. That's it.
Right.
All right.
I also usually say something like, there's a reason why each and every one of these clauses is in here.
Right.
This isn't in here for no reason.
Yeah.
This is to protect you, or to protect me, or to enshrine what we've agreed on, because in the past it's caused problems and there's been issues.
Right. And we don't want issues 15 or 30 days from now. Let's just handle it now. And and we'll take it from there. So what kind of high points, Judah, are important here?
Well, obviously the due date of the rent. And this circles back around to the proration of rent. I say, listen, the rent is always due on the 1st of the month. Even though you're moving in on the 5th, rent is due on the 1st of the month. We also cover tenant responsibilities. So are they responsible for, mowing the lawn or not mowing the lawn, or who does the shoveling and things like that. One of the other big things that I include in all my leases, and this one is for free, dear listeners, the basements are always excluded from the rented space. I don't tell people they can't go into the basement. I don't tell people they can't use the basement, but I put in the lease that it is part of excluded space for liability's sake. So I tell them, I'm like, look, I'm not going to lock the basement, and you might need to go down there and flip a breaker or something like that. But if you're in the basement and you slip and fall, you shouldn't have been down there. I'm not going to come and check and see if you put anything in the basement, but if you have stuff stored in the basement and it gets water damage, it shouldn't have been there to begin with. Does that make sense? And they kind of understand what you're talking about there.
This comes into play a lot of times when people store their stuff in the basement and there's a high moisture level down there, right? If you put a dehumidifier down there, they complain that their electric bill's too high. Right. You take it out and all of a sudden they have white mold clusters growing on their blankets that they were storing down there. And they want you to pay for them because they have to throw them out. And their $1,000, Air Jordan, retro Air Jordans are now your responsibility, even though they're not. Good point, Jude. Keep going.
Yeah. So you want to try and not limit basement access, but just make it clear that the lease does not include the basement space. The other thing that you want to go over with them and be very clear with them is that utilities, gas and electric, are going to be in their name, but there are also going to be other utilities, water, sewer, trash, that's not in their name, but that they are responsible for. and that
Yep.
will be treated as unpaid rent. Now, whether or not the judge will award it to you, whether or not you can actually meaningful collect for it is something different. But you want to, kind of put the fear of the Lord into them that if they don't pay that, rental, if they don't pay that utility payment, that it will be treated like unpaid rent. And if it goes unpaid, it could result in a late fee and evictions.
Or on the flip side, listen, if you're covering all utilities and everything's included, it ought to be noted on the rent.
Right.
And it's just something that should be highlighted. Hey, look, I'm going to cover the water bill. You're going to take care of the electric and gas.
Right. This is a multifamily home, so we're taking care of XYZ. Yep, absolutely.
Right. All right.
You want to tell people what your late fee is. And you want to say, listen, I have a 5-day grace period. Rent is, due on the 1st. It's late on the 5th. The late fee will be assessed on the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
If you are late, you will be charged a late fee.
Right.
That's how that goes. You will be charged a late fee. I don't know what type of person you actually are. Right now, I'm giving you all the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to find out real quick what type of person you are. And my perception of you is largely depending on your actions and your behavior.
What if the rent doesn't arrive, but I put it in the mail and it doesn't arrive till like the 10th?
That's so that's a great question. So that's a really great question. And that's why we do the difference between the 5th and the 1st. You know what I mean? We have that grace period. Technically, I could legally, morally, and ethically say if I get the rent on the 2nd, it's late. So go ahead and postmark it and drop it in the mail on the 1st or before the 1st of every month. And then it should be in my hands by the 5th. Also, we have online payments that you can pay your rent online as well.
Yep. Perfect. All right.
And by the way, pay near me is the option. I just took over management of 27 units in Lebanon, and they all expect to pay with cash. And we had to tell them all that they didn't. And we were sitting around having a high-level brass meeting because it was 27 units that we needed to work out. And they were like, "Oh yeah, well, we'll just tell them about the pay near me link." So
people love that too, because if they're paying cash, that means they have to drive down to your office and hand it to you, or they expect you to come pick it up. And you should not pick up rent. That's an aside. All right. What are some must-haves you have to have in your lease?
So obviously you've got to include the notice to pay rent or quit. Or the waiver of the notice to pay rent or quit. In the state of Pennsylvania, if you want to file for eviction, the first thing you have to do is post on their door that they have to pay the rent or else they're going to be evicted. But it is acceptable for a lease to contain a notice to pay rent or quit waiver. So you want to make sure that you include that in there. You want to include a pamphlet to them about lead-based paint. I've said to property managers and property management meetings, and it has been our official company policy, no single task you do is more important than taking that flyer and handing it to a tenant if the house is built before 1976, 1972. Yeah, I get that, and Hurricane Agnes and the flood laws all confused. There was a lot of stuff that happened, in there, and mobile homes. You can lend on mobile homes before like March of '74, but not after March of '74. Anyway, the point is, so '78, right? So that is critically important for your liability, because guess what? If you don't hand them that, it doesn't matter if they got lead paint at their church or their grandmother's house or the daycare or whatever else. They're coming after you, because even if you're a mom and pop landlord, they think that you're a big fat rich head. So that's very important. 30 days is standard, notice to make changes if they want to make changes, or you want to make changes to the lease. Like if for whatever reason you want to change what the due date is for somebody, maybe they get a Social Security check on the 3rd of every month, and this is that 3% of the time you're going to make an exception. Also, you have a 60-day notice to terminate clause. Doesn't mean that they're not going to forfeit the security deposit. Doesn't mean anything like that, but they can be, if they want to forfeit in month 6, and as long as they give you 60 days notice, you're not going to hold them responsible for the rest of the lease, which legally and ethically you could. You might have a hard time getting a judge to support that, but you don't have to tell them that. And then also either set up an auto renewal, if this lease goes past the date, that it automatically renews for 30 days. What I do 100% of the time, though, is I don't let my leases go auto renewal. I automatically put them, I automatically try to get them to sign a year-long lease. But you do want an auto renew clause in there so that they're not technically a holdover tenant, and that they're not technically in there without a lease, which could change their classification to not being able to evict them. And there's just all kinds of crazy stuff that happens if you don't have an auto renew policy in the lease.
Yeah, and if you're somebody that's not super diligent, put the auto renew in there 100%. If you're really on top of it and you can put this in your calendar and you know that 60 days before the end of the lease, it'll pop up and you'll say, okay, well, I'll send them a lease renewal form and send them out a new lease, then you don't have to worry about it. But it's one of those things that like you got to
be in the lease. Yeah, I think I'm super diligent about it. We always also have it in the lease, and then that way if they're on vacation, I can't get a hold of them, or who knows what could happen.
Right. All right. Pre-occupancy inspection. So a couple things with this. I've done these, and you know what? As I was reading through your notes, Judah, one thing that really popped out to me is is doing 2 inspections. You do it by yourself first to make sure that, oh yeah, I promised them we were going to paint that ceiling. I promised them that we were going to make sure that the house was nice and clean. And it's amazing. You got a bill from the cleaner, but they never showed up. Or.
Oh, so you mean your cleaner doesn't show up sometimes too, Josh? That happens to you too? Okay, good.
Dude, I broke my heel one time because the cleaner took the key to the front door and I jumped over the fence in the back. Spent too much time in crutches for that. But bottom line is, look, you don't know what you don't know unless you are going to stand there and watch your people work. Unless you like surprises that make you look bad, do 2 inspections, one for yourself and one with the tenant.
It's just like before we talked about, having a 30-second elevator pitch and a 30-second commercial. That was some content that we've gone over in the past, and how you and your clients shouldn't be hearing your pitch for the first time. You should know what you say. I don't care if you're pitching or whatever you're pitching. It should not be the first time you're saying those words. When you do an inspection, you should not be surprised by what you find. You know what I mean? You should not, when the person goes to turn on that stove burner, you shouldn't be like, ooh, I hope that warms up. When somebody goes to turn on the hot water and stick their hand under it to make sure that the hot water is actually warm, you shouldn't say, ooh, I wonder if that's, gonna be okay or not.
Oh, the gas is off. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Here's the other thing is I've already had situations where on a 4-burner stove, this happens more often than it should. Like one burner doesn't work. So you want to do this multi-point inspection of the property so that when you walk it with your tenant, you can say, hey, by the way, the painter's coming tomorrow to finish painting the bathroom ceiling, and I just found out that this stove burner doesn't work. We're going to get somebody in here as soon as possible, but the oven still works and the other 3 burners work. And so I think we're going to be okay. We're either going to replace that element or replace the stove or work something out. I don't know what the timetable on that is. If you tell them right up front, hey, we're going to do the whole inspection, but these are going to be the 2 things we find, it's not like
it's easy.
The worst thing you can do is don't do an inspection or hope those things don't come up, because what happens is as soon as you leave, they run around the house, they find those 2 things, and then they're upset, and then they start making stuff up. I almost said another S word. They start making stuff up about also, oh my goodness, this is so bad. Like there's all this stuff wrong with the house, and you didn't do this and you didn't do this, and some of it's legitimate, but the rest of it is drama. You want to keep the drama to a minimum by saying, hey, Mr. Tenant, listen, I know this is wrong and this is wrong. I think that's it. Let's walk through the rest of the house and see what else might be missing. And here's the thing: is I'm going to be taking care of this way, and I'm going to be solving this problem this way. So let's make sure that everything else is going good. You've put them at ease, and you've taken away their ability to get upset.
Judah, I got a question for you. Yeah. We're running a little bit long. Do you have time?
Yeah.
All right. So Imagine if so I had a situation years ago where the tenant walked through the property, and on the move-in inspection, she said, "I don't like the carpet."
Right.
It wasn't, "Hey, this carpet has, dog
Stains
stain."
on it. My preference is for
Right?
a different color.
Well, long story short, we ended up in eviction court because she moved in, didn't pay any rent, and then just got up and moved all of her stuff out, left the house wide open for about 2 weeks until we found out, and there was vandalism and all this kind of stuff. But in court, this came up, and it was on the inspection sheet. Carpet, carpet needs to be changed, right? So how do you address items that do not need to be replaced? They are in fine condition, but they're not brand new. I mean, look, that happens all the time, right? Like if you wanted to create the Taj Mahal for a rental property, that's one thing, but we're not talking about, A plus high end rentals most of the time. So
Yep.
how do you handle that? How do you handle that with a tenant?
I say that this is. I mean, I say that this is the condition that this is being rented in, as
Right.
it is.
Well, and that's the thing that most people don't realize is that a lease is in as is condition. Like
Right.
as the property is presented at the time that you take occupancy, and that's why you do the documentation.
That's also why you conduct a showing. That's why I hate renting property sight unseen.
Oh yeah,
Like 2 to 3% of the time, I rent a property sight unseen, and you can technically do it, but I hate doing it because those issues can come up. And I can say, listen, you came to see the house. This is what the shape that it was in, and this is never coming up before the move-in inspection. We are not going to be doing that.
that's right. All
If
right.
you want to forfeit your security deposit and first month's rent and move out, and not move forward with this lease, I understand.
Yeah. All right. So you've done the walkthrough. Boom. It's move-in day. You got your lease to walk through, all this kind of stuff. Talk to me about what happens here.
Well, so again, you're just making sure that any issues that needed to be fixed or needed to be addressed, was there some trash left behind? Was there a kitchen floor that you promised you were going to get mopped? There's always just stuff. Did all the stuff get done and taken care of? And there's just some stuff that you're going to need to go over. You're also going to want to again verify and double check that they have utility accounts in their name. What's your PPL account number? What's your UGI account number? They give that to me, and I write it down, and I can tell based on is it in the right format.
Yeah, the account number is 1. Bless you.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So the 5
like
things.
A professional broadcaster, I hit the mute button. I don't know if you noticed
that. Well done. What are the 5 things that you need to hand over the keys?
Right. So they are gas utility number, gas utility account number, electric account number, first month's rent, last month's rent and security deposit, photocopy of driver's license and social security card. You get those things so that you can, before you move them in.
Perfect. All right. And the last thing, you hand them the keys. They're ready to move their stuff in. Make sure that you, one more time, like you spent all this time with them going over the lease. You told them 1,000,000 times, but go over one more time. Your rent is due on the 1st. No pets. If I find a pet in here, we have the option to evict, but at minimal, I'm going to charge you an extra $250 for that cat.
Right.
Or
whatever your pet fee and deposit is. And here's the other thing. You also want to let them know, hey, listen, if I find a pet in here, like sometimes we charge extra, but like this owner who I'm managing this property for, this owner, he told me no pets, no pets. So if you get a pet, you will be evicted. It won't be like, oh, well, can we, set up a payment or whatever, or this or that. Like this owner is crazy about it because of that carpet or because they had a cat dander allergy problem or whatever the case may be. If it's and your owners, like some of my owners are like, I prefer no pets. And I just kind of tell those people, remember, no pets. If it's absolutely no pets, I definitely tell them that.
Yeah. So that, and then we've got our maintenance and inspections. Again, hey, look, if you find something going wrong in the house, reiterate how to handle maintenance calls, who to call. If it's you, then so be it. But also, what kind of things constitute a maintenance call? If
And
you're
what
like,
kind of things constitute an emergency? Here's our
yeah,
emergency contact information.
yeah,
This is how you contact for an emergency. And if it doesn't involve water that's dripping at a rate of more than filling a 5-gallon bucket in an hour. That's kind of our standard. So, is the water dripping at a rate that more than than an hour? And I think we lost Josh here. Hopefully we didn't lose me too.
I'm here.
Okay. So water dripping at a faster rate than we'll fill a 5-gallon bucket in an hour. Sparks, smoke, flames. It's not actually an emergency. Heat in the middle of wintertime. Heat in the middle of wintertime. But it's got to be sparks, smoke, flames, water dripping at a faster rate. All these other things that people think are emergencies just are not emergencies.
Well, and the thing is, if you let them know, like, of course I'm going to respond to your maintenance call, and we're going to come out and we're going to take care of it. But these are the things. My favorite line when moving in a tenant has always been, listen, if you call me for something like unclogging your toilet or changing a light bulb, I will gladly do it. But you're going to get a bill for $100 because basic maintenance, things like, oh, you have a slow draining tub. Well, maybe that's all the hair that's caught in there. Maybe first pull out the hair, and second, buy a bottle of Drano.
Right.
If after you do those things, you still have a problem, okay, we'll come out and address it. But we're not like your on-call maintenance man for to clean your tile in your bathroom or whatever. Right. And then last thing is access to the property / inspections. Like, this is one thing I always like to go over with tenants. Look, I'm not going to just show up unannounced and go into your property, but there may be times when I have to come in for routine maintenance. I have to come in to show the property at the end of the lease. I have to come in for one reason or another. Maybe I'm getting new insurance or an appraisal or something like that. I'm not here to inconvenience your life. I'm going to let you know within 24 hours, like 24 hours or more beforehand. And then I'm going to use my key. That's it. If you change the locks on the property, we're going to have a problem.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and I can tell you how many times that I just recently listed a property for a guy. It's a commercial, or it's an investment property, and it's like, yeah, the tenant changed the keys a while back. I'm like, what? And they're still here? Like, and you didn't change them back, and you didn't force them to change them? I mean, like, it's a safety problem if you can't get access to the property.
Yeah. So that's an issue. All right. So that's all we got for today. I think we covered a lot. Tomorrow we are either going to have an awesome guest on. We just haven't gotten a confirmation yet, or we are going to be back here with some more great content tomorrow. We'll be here at noon. I want to give a shout out real quick to Paul McHugh and Bayshore Travis. Bayshore Travis, man, dude, you are just racking up the likes and loves. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you saw in today's program, don't forget to like and share the show. And again, we'll be back here tomorrow at noon. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Hey, everybody.